You see, kid, in this ugly little theater we call life, the ones who win ain't the ones that scream the loudest or cry the hardest. It's the ones who learn to shut up and observe. You think talking gets you somewhere? You think your truth matters in a world that thrives on illusion? Let me tell you something. They don't care. Your pain, your honesty, your warnings, that's all background noise to people addicted to their own voice. You know what your real power is? Silence. That's right. Not your muscles, not your words, not the noise you make when you're desperate to be heard. No, it's in what you don't say. You sit there, bleeding inside, shaking under the surface, hearing everything. Every fake laugh, every lie, every stab they call a joke. You hear it all, and you don't say a damn thing. That's strength. That's control. That's what breaks people. Because people, they expect explosions, reactions, tears, rage. But when you give them nothing, nothing terrifies them more than silence from someone who knows everything. You hear them plotting, disrespecting, underestimating you. You hear the shift in tone, the passive-aggressive digs, the cheap shots disguised as humor. And you let them talk. You let them dig. Let them bury themselves. Because when you move, it won't be with noise. It'll be surgical. It'll be clean. It'll be final. You see, people like to test you. They poke at you, try to pull your strings like they're playing some puppet game. But when you don't react, they panic. Why? Because it means they don't control you. And the second someone knows they can't control you, they start fearing you. It's funny. They fear the quiet ones. They laugh at you when you're loud, but they whisper your name in fear when you're quiet. That silence, it becomes a storm. A storm they can't predict. A storm they know is coming, but they don't know when. And that's where you live now. Right there, in the eye of the storm, watching, waiting, listening. Let me tell you something they'll never admit. They need you to break. They want you loud, emotional, chaotic, because that's easy to handle. That's noise they can blame. But when you're still, when you're cold and calculated, you become untouchable. You become dangerous. They don't teach this in school. They don't write this in the self-help books. You don't become powerful by screaming. You become powerful by mastering the art of restraint. The art of hearing every betrayal, every doubt, every insult, and choosing not to react. Because you're not here to entertain their chaos. You're here to dismantle it, quietly, strategically, without warning. See? The world? It belongs to those who keep their mouth shut and ears open. You speak too much, they know your next move. You react too fast, they learn your weakness. But if you sit there, eyes sharp, lips sealed, they can't read you. And that's what haunts them. They don't know if you're planning revenge or just watching them fail on their own. And that, my friend, is where the power begins. Not in revenge, not in destruction, but in patience, in the calm, in the silence before the collapse. And when the time comes to move, you won't shout, you won't warn, you'll simply act. And the silence you kept all this time, it will echo louder than any scream they ever expected. They don't know what you carry inside. They think you're soft because you're silent. They think you're calm means weakness. Fools, every single one of them. They have no idea that behind those quiet eyes is a mind that never sleeps. A soul that's been burned, beaten, betrayed, and yet never broke. You heard them when they mocked you. You caught the smirks, the sideways glances, the fake concern. You knew the moment they shifted from being real to being rehearsed. And you didn't flinch. You didn't react. You sat still. Let them play their games. Let them expose themselves. You let them believe you didn't notice. That's what hurt them the most. That you heard everything and still chose silence. Because silence is control. Silence is dominance. And when you master it, you become a ghost in their mind. Every word they say after that, every step they take, they wonder if you're still watching, if you're waiting for the right moment to make your move. And that paranoia, that's your presence. You live rent-free in the corners of their guilt. You know what people really fear? Accountability. That's why they run their mouths, trying to twist the truth before you can speak it. But when you don't say a word, when you don't defend yourself, don't justify, don't retaliate, they start crumbling under their own lies because they built their comfort on the idea that you'd fold, that you'd react, but you didn't. You stayed quiet, and in that quiet, their own voices became unbearable. That's the curse of the liar. They need you to scream so they can play the victim. But you didn't give them that gift. You gave them silence, and it wrecked them. You let their words hang in the air, unanswered, untouched. And now they're drowning in the echo of their own actions. That's justice. That's the kind of punishment you can't fake. A reaction fades, but silence? Silence lingers. Silence stains. Silence grows roots inside their guilt and makes them see themselves for what they really are. Let me teach you something they don't want you to learn. Your silence isn't weakness. It's a loaded gun. Every second you don't respond, every day you stay quiet, you're cocking that weapon, not to destroy, no, but to show them that you're above their level, that they don't deserve your voice. Because when you've been through hell, when you've been betrayed, humiliated, disrespected, you don't scream for validation. You don't beg to be understood. You go quiet. You go cold. You let your success, your growth, your peace be the noise that breaks them. And they won't handle that. Trust me. People can handle yelling, arguing, even being exposed, but they can't handle being ignored. They can't handle the realization that you moved on, leveled up, and never looked back. That you heard everything and decided it wasn't even worth a response. So next time they test you, Don't bark. Don't bite. Don't beg. Just smile that quiet smile. Let them think they've won. Let them celebrate your silence like it's their victory. They have no idea it's your weapon. Because real revenge, it's not loud. It's not messy. It's not even satisfying in the way they imagine. Real revenge is in proving them irrelevant. Real revenge is becoming so far above them that their name doesn't even trigger emotion anymore. You didn't stay quiet because you were scared. You stayed quiet because you were focused, calculated, dangerous. And now that silence they mocked, it's becoming the ghost that haunts them every night. And you just keep walking, keep listening, keep building, one silent step at a time. You ever notice how the loudest ones are usually the weakest? Yeah, the ones always barking, always flapping their lips, always needing a crowd to validate their existence. You hear them before you see them, and that's the damn problem. They talk like they've won something, like they've earned pain, like they've carried burdens you sleep with every night. But you don't talk. You don't need to, because you carry your hell in silence. You wake up to memories that chew at your insides. You walk through rooms filled with fake smiles, fake "how are yous?" and you answer with your eyes, not your mouth. You've seen too much, felt too deep, to waste time on surface conversations. You've heard betrayal whisper in your ear from voices you once trusted. You've watched hands that once held you become the first to throw stones. And what did you do? Nothing. You just listened. Just watched. Just let the silence wrap around you like armor. That's not cowardice. That's discipline. That's power. People don't understand what it means to be built in silence. They think if you're not out here telling your side, defending your name, you're weak. But they don't see what silence does to a man. It sharpens him. It isolates him in the best way. It strips everything fake out of his life and replaces it with purpose, precision, patience. You sat through the storms without making a scene. You let them lie on your name and stood still while the world whispered. And now look at you. Still breathing, still standing, still watching. That's what rattles them. That you're still here. That their drama didn't drown you. That their games didn't break you. They expected fireworks when they threw dirt on your name. They expected you to cry, to lash out, to beg. But instead, you gave them nothing. Just silence. And it scared them more than any shout ever could. You hear them now, don't you? Still talking. Still trying to control the narrative. Still throwing pebbles, hoping for an avalanche. But here's the truth. They're not talking to you anymore. They're talking to themselves, trying to convince themselves they did the right thing, trying to erase their own guilt by painting you as the villain. And you let them, because your silence is no longer for survival. It's for strategy. You're not ignoring them because you're hurt. You're ignoring them because they're no longer relevant. Because every time they speak your name, they hand you free rent in their head. Every time they try to explain themselves to people who don't even care, you win. Because real ones don't explain themselves to the noise. They just build. They just move. They just evolve. And one day, the same mouths that tried to bury you, they'll be too busy choking on their own regret. So here's what you do now. You stay cold, stay quiet, stay dangerous. You don't owe them your words. You don't owe them your rage. Let them live in confusion. Let them wonder why you stopped talking, why you disappeared, why you didn't swing back. They'll call it weakness, but deep down, they'll know. It's control. You could speak, but you choose not to. You could destroy, but you choose to wait. That's what kills them. Not the silence itself, but what it means. That they no longer matter. That you've outgrown their chaos. That you've moved from being the one who was hurt to the one who hurts without lifting a finger. That's the ultimate power. And you wear it well. They think silence means you've got nothing to say, but they forget sometimes silence is a sentence, a final one, a verdict, a clean cut. See, people fear what they can't predict, and nothing is more unpredictable than a person who listens more than they speak. You don't announce your feelings. You bury them. You don't explain your scars. You walk with them. And every step you take without screaming, without justifying, without defending yourself, it burns them. Because they expected a firework, but you became a shadow. They wanted attention, but you became a ghost. You stopped reacting, stopped proving, stopped explaining. That's what eats at them now. The fact that you heard everything and chose to evolve in silence. Let me tell you something. You didn't get stronger by talking. You got stronger by surviving. You sat with your demons in silence, stared at your pain with no witness, and rose from things that would have left them shattered. They only know noise. You know pain. They only know gossip. You know grief. And every time they threw another stone, you didn't bleed. You built. You turned betrayal into blueprints. You turned heartbreak into fuel. And now, every scar is a story you chose not to share. Not because you're ashamed, but because not everyone deserves to know how deep your roots run. Some people, they don't deserve to hear your journey. They don't deserve the privilege of your pain. They had their chance. They played with your loyalty. They mistook your softness for weakness. So now, they get silence. Not as a retreat, but as a response, as a warning, as the only truth they'll ever get from you again. And you sit there now, watching, learning, evolving. You don't seek revenge in the way they expect. You don't attack. You don't scream. You just grow. Grow so loud in your success, they have to cover their ears. Grow so far, they need binoculars to even glimpse your shadow. grow so cold they can't even imagine the warmth they used to take for granted. And every step of the way, you say nothing. You let your silence scream what your mouth no longer needs to. You can't hurt me anymore. Not because you're healed, but because you're smarter, stronger. You've learned that peace isn't in proving them wrong with words. Peace is walking away, knowing they'll never find someone like you again, that they'll search for your loyalty in liars, your patience in pretenders, your depth in the shallow, and they'll choke on the truth. You were the rarest one they'll ever meet, and they threw you away trying to feed their ego. Don't underestimate what you've become. You're not just surviving anymore. You're studying. You're watching every move, every fake smile, every backhanded compliment. And you're filing it away, not for revenge, for precision. So when you act, it's not messy, it's not emotional, it's not loud, it's surgical, it's silent. It's the kind of move that doesn't shake the room. It removes you from it entirely, quietly, cleanly, and leaves them with nothing but the echo of your absence. And that's what destroys them. Not your rage, not your screams, your silence. The silence that says, I don't care anymore. You don't matter anymore. That's what haunts them. That's what leaves them crawling back to memories you've already burned. Because once you go quiet, they finally hear the truth. They were never strong enough to break you, only loud enough to think they did. They'll say you changed. They'll whisper it in the dark when your name starts rising in rooms they can't enter anymore. He's not the same, they'll mutter, like that's an insult. But you know what that really means? You stop tolerating the disrespect. You stop showing up for people who never showed up for you. You stopped explaining yourself to ears that were never listening. And when you cut your voice off from their chaos, you became dangerous. Not because you threatened them, not because you harmed them, but because you evolved beyond their reach. You leveled up in silence. You rebuilt in silence. You suffered in silence. And now, when they look at you, they see the version they swore would never exist. The version that didn't need them. People love the version of you that breaks, that bends, that answers every call, every message, every lie with grace. But the moment you withdraw, the moment you go quiet, they call you bitter, cold, arrogant. Why? Because you're no longer serving their ego. You're no longer feeding their delusion. You stopped clapping for people who never clapped for you. You stopped participating in conversations that insulted your intelligence. And now they say you're heartless. Nah, you're not heartless. You're just done bleeding for people who laughed while you bled. You're done repeating yourself to ears that filtered your truth to fit their narrative. And that silence? It's not a phase. It's a new language. A language only the real ones understand. And the funny thing is, they still talk. Oh, they talk a lot. trying to fill the silence you left behind. But they don't realize the louder they get, the more obvious their guilt becomes. You were the mirror, the one that reflected their fakeness, their insecurities, their cowardice. And when you stopped reflecting them, they broke. Because now they have to look at themselves without your light, without your patience, without your forgiveness. And it's ugly, it's uncomfortable, it's unbearable. So they lie to others, to themselves, about you, because that's easier than facing the truth. You walked away with your dignity, and they stayed behind, empty and loud. You sit in silence now, not because you're void of emotion, but because you're full of awareness. You know who's real, who's fake, who clapped when you lost, who vanished when you needed them. You took the hits in silence, swallowed betrayal like broken glass, and still smiled. Not for them, but for yourself. Because you knew every loss was a lesson. Every goodbye was a filter. Every fake friend, every two-faced smile. They were showing you who they were, and you were listening. Quietly, collecting data, connecting dots. Until you didn't need words anymore. Just moves. Cold, calm, calculated moves. And now, your silence is your strike. So let them talk. Let them spin their version of the story. Let them post, text, gossip, pretend. It doesn't matter. Because while they're busy defending a lie, you're living your truth. While they chase attention, you chase peace. While they seek followers, you seek freedom. And that's the real difference. They want to be seen. You want to be unbothered, untouchable, unavailable. And that, my friend, is the highest form of power. Not being loud, not being liked, but being free from needing either. You ever notice how silence reveals everything? Not just what they say when you stop speaking, but how they act when your presence disappears. That's when the mask slips. That's when truth walks in. Because when you're no longer available to absorb their poison, when you cut off the supply of your loyalty, your time, your energy, they panic. Not because they miss you, but because they can't use you. They don't grieve your absence. They grieve the loss of control. You were never just a person to them. You were a resource, a fix, a punching bag when life hit them too hard. But the moment you chose silence, you forced them to sit with themselves. And that's the part they can't handle. That's the hell they never saw coming. And you know what? Let them suffer in that silence. You gave enough. You stayed long enough. You excused betrayal, tolerated manipulation, swallowed hurt like it was your fault. You gave explanations to people who already made up their minds about you. You stayed loyal to people who only stayed until their needs were met. And now, the silence you chose, it's your freedom, the most sacred kind. The kind that says, you had your chance. You blew it. I owe you nothing. Not my words, not my presence, not even a goodbye. because that's what they never expected. They expected a dramatic ending, a scene, a breakdown. But you ended the story without even writing the last line. You just closed the book and walked away. And now they're stuck rereading chapters that never belonged to them. You know what silence does to the guilty? It cooks them from the inside. It forces them to replay every moment they ignored your value. Every time they thought you were a permanent option while treating you like an afterthought. And the thing is, you saw it all. You just didn't say anything. You let them think they were getting away with it. You watched the disrespect build up like mold on a wall you once kept spotless. And one day, you stopped cleaning, you stopped fixing. You stopped begging them to see your worth. And that shift, that decision, it rewrote the whole dynamic. Because the most powerful thing you ever did wasn't exploding. It was disconnecting. Quietly. Without noise. Without warning. And that kind of silence, that's lethal. Now they scroll through your life from behind blocked accounts. They watch your peace like it's a threat. They hear your name in rooms you never invited them to, and it burns. Because while they were talking, you were working. While they were faking, you were healing. While they were performing for attention, you were training in the shadows. And now, they don't recognize you. Not because you became someone else, but because you finally became who you were always meant to be. Without their noise dragging you down. You stopped answering to chaos, stopped entertaining nonsense, stopped handing out pieces of your soul like it was candy. And that transformation, it cost you your comfort, but it gave you your crown. So let them sit in confusion. Let them wonder how you went from broken to bulletproof. Don't explain. Don't clarify. Don't post your growth for their approval. Let your silence be your signature. Let your distance be your final message. Because the truth is, you don't owe anyone the version of you that suffered for their convenience. You don't owe anyone the soft parts they used like weapons. From here on out, your silence is your sanctuary. Your silence is your strength. Your silence is your standard. And if they can't meet you there, then they were never meant to stand beside you. They'll start saying you were always the problem, that you were too quiet, too cold, too distant. They'll paint you as bitter because it's easier than admitting they broke something valuable. That's what cowards do. They rewrite the script to protect their ego. They talk about how you changed, how you became different. Like you woke up one day and turned into a ghost for no reason. But deep down, they know. Oh, they know. They remember every time you gave them a chance to come correct. Every time you looked them in the eye and waited for honesty, for effort, for something real. And what did they do? Played games, lied, shrugged you off like you were replaceable. So when you went quiet, when you stopped showing up, when your voice disappeared from their world, It wasn't random. It was earned, deserved, chosen. And now they're left choking on the silence they caused. You didn't go quiet because you had nothing left to say. You went quiet because they weren't worth hearing it. You watched their actions louder than their words. You caught every contradiction, every backhanded comment, every moment their eyes said, "I don't value you," while their mouth tried to sound sweet. And you stayed. You stayed longer than you should have. You gave them space to fix it, to change, to grow. But instead, they grew comfortable. They mistook your patience for permission. And when you finally stopped speaking, it wasn't out of spite. It was out of self-respect. That silence wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary. A new line in the sand that said, "This is where I end, and you no longer get to cross." Now they hate the quiet, not because they miss you, but because the silence exposes them. There's no more distraction, no more deflection, no more scapegoat, just them, sitting in the ruins of what they destroyed, trying to scream over the sound of your absence. And that absence, it's louder than any words you could have thrown. That absence follows them into conversations, into memories, into their own reflections. They reach for you, not because they care, but because they lost control. You were their emotional punching bag, their therapy session, their stability. And when you unplugged that connection, when you stopped picking up the phone, stopped explaining, stopped reacting, they realized they were never strong without you. You were their backbone, their structure. And without you, they crumble under the weight of their own chaos. And don't for a second feel guilty for that. You earned your silence. You earned your distance. You earned the peace you bled for. Because silence, real silence, isn't easy. It's not passive. It's not cowardice. It's discipline. To hear it all, to feel it all, to be betrayed, tested, used, ignored, and say nothing. That takes strength most people will never understand. That takes clarity. It takes emotional maturity. And most of all, it takes the decision to stop proving your worth to people who were blind to it. You stopped handing out explanations like coupons. You stopped negotiating your value with people who couldn't afford your loyalty. And now, you don't speak unless it's purposeful. You don't show up unless it's mutual. You don't react unless it's strategic. You are no longer accessible. You are no longer predictable. You are no longer theirs. Let them spin their stories. Let them play victim in the narratives they wrote with their own actions. You know the truth. Your silence knows the truth. And real ones, they'll feel that truth without you ever having to raise your voice. Because in a world full of noise, the quiet ones carry the sharpest edge. They'll watch you now with different eyes. Not admiration, not love, fear. The kind that creeps in slow when someone realizes the one they underestimated the most never needed them at all. You don't even move the same anymore. You don't walk for validation. You don't speak to be understood. You move in silence. You breathe in silence. And your silence, it screams discipline, pain, growth, and warning. You're not the person they once toyed with. That version of you, the one who tolerated their nonsense, who waited on their apologies, who forgave them before they even said sorry, he's gone. And in his place stands someone they can't predict, can't manipulate, can't reach. Because silence, it turned you into a weapon they never saw coming. And now, every room you walk into feels colder because your presence demands respect. Not with volume, but with stillness. They'll tell people you were too much, too intense, too distant. That's how they sleep at night, by pretending they were the victim of your standards. But deep down, they remember the day you stopped bending. The moment your silence became a mirror to their own behavior. They saw it all back then. They just never thought you'd have the courage to walk away. See, most people expect you to stay, to keep loving them through their toxicity, to keep explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. But you flipped the script without saying a word. You didn't argue. You didn't announce your exit. You just faded into the shadows and became your own light. And that's what destroys them. Not that you left, but that you never looked back. That you heard everything they said, everything they didn't say, and you walked away with your pride intact. You see, silence is a slow burn. It's the kind of fire that doesn't need oxygen to survive. It simmers beneath the surface, eating away at the lies, the disrespect, the betrayal. You carry that fire now, not to destroy them, but to fuel you. You let them keep their version of the story while you build a life so loud in peace, it drowns out every lie they ever told. And when they see you thriving, they'll claim you switched up. That's what people say when they realize you no longer exist to serve their comfort. They don't miss you. They miss the access. They miss the version of you that didn't know how to say no, that gave without limits, that loved without conditions. But now, you've become sacred, selective, silent, and nothing terrifies them more than realizing they're no longer entitled to the version of you they once abused. Don't look back. Don't explain. Don't break your silence just to make cowards feel better about losing you. They earned that silence. They built that distance. Let them sit in the discomfort they created. You've outgrown their drama, their games, their small talk. You don't have time to convince people of your value anymore. Your existence is the proof. Your absence is the consequence. You are not here to be loud. You are here to be felt. In the quiet moments, in the shifting energy, in the guilt they try to bury. And every time they hear your name, they'll remember. It wasn't your silence that hurt them. It was their actions that led to it. You just chose peace over pettiness, clarity over chaos, distance over disrespect. So stay silent, stay steady, Stay unseen. Let your calm be the storm they never recovered from. Because now, you speak only when it matters. And that kind of power, they'll never get close enough to ruin it again. You know what silence really is? It's the art of watching people expose themselves. It's the patience of a man who's been through enough war to know that reacting too soon is exactly what they want. You see it, don't you? The fake concern, the forced smiles, the way they ask how you are, not because they care, but because they want access again. They want the version of you that stayed up fixing what they broke, that stretched himself thin to make sure everyone else was full. But that version, dead and buried. You heard their jokes, their lies, the subtle disrespect they didn't think you noticed, and you never interrupted. That's what haunts them now. That's what eats them alive. That you heard every bit of it and just smiled. Not because you were okay, but because you were already done. People don't understand how heavy it is to stay quiet when your soul is screaming. To bite your tongue when you know you could tear the truth through their entire fake reality. But you didn't. You took the high road. You took the lonely path. You swallowed your pride, your anger, your pain, and you used it. You built from it. And now you walk like a man who doesn't need approval, doesn't need to be seen. You're not in rooms for attention. You're there for results. You show up with purpose, not emotion. That's what makes them nervous. You stopped giving your energy to people who only noticed your worth when it wasn't available anymore. You stopped explaining what your silence already screamed. They'll swear they never meant to hurt you, that it was all a misunderstanding, but you were there. You saw the smirks, the timing of the betrayals, the silence when you were struggling, the celebrations when you were falling. And you still didn't call them out. You let time do the talking. You let distance speak the truth. Because people can argue with your words, but they can't argue with your absence. They can't argue with your peace. They can't fight with someone who no longer shows up for the war. And that kind of silence, it stings, because it says you're not even worth the energy it would take to hate you. That's what real silence does. It doesn't scream, it doesn't warn, it just leaves them alone with their choices, their guilt, their ghosts. And now they see you shining, not in noise, but in presence. You walk with a kind of calm that no longer needs explanation. You've learned that silence isn't about retreating. It's about rising. It's about choosing yourself, choosing your peace. You don't argue with fools anymore. You don't chase clarity from people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't water connections that only bloom when it's convenient for them. You listen. You observe. You move. And when you speak now, every word hits like a bullet, precise, earned, final. Because you've lived through storms that taught you. Not everyone deserves your truth. Not everyone deserves your voice. Some only deserve the echo of your silence. And here's the part they'll never say out loud. They miss the version of you that stayed. The version that cared too much, gave too much, forgave too much. But that version died the day you realized silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. That silence doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're done. Done repeating yourself. Done being the only one who shows up. Done explaining your heart to people who kept stepping on it like a doormat. Now your silence, it's sacred. It's earned. And it's here to stay.